sports reporter Jack Rosser. Welcome to you both. Before we chat, let's quickly run you through the back pages. And we'll start with The Sun. The back page splashes with Abira Eza. The headline reads, all to Eza / easy, of course. Star Abira leads Prem clean sweep. They also carry the news of Nottingham Forest's 2-2 draw with Real Betis in the Europa League. Anthony's late strike hits the post, and news from the Ryder Cup. These quotes coming from Justin Rose on Donald Trump, who's expected to be there on Friday. In the Telegraph, Rory McIlroy to silence us yobs at the Ryder Cup in New York as the build-up to that Ryder Cup continues. And Anthony again making this newspaper as well. Anthony makes his point. United reject scores late as Betis hold Forest. In the Times here, quotes from Wayne Rooney, where he said, I'd be dead but for Colleen, discussing the support that his wife has given him with his struggles with alcohol over the years. They also cover Eza of the mark for Arsenal. More security at Ryder Cup, again with that visit from President Trump. And Draper wants prize pot hike. How about this in the Mirror Online? Jeremy Cross writes, Kobbie Mainoo ready to leave Man United in January. And that's despite new Ruben Amorim talks. Lots to discuss there going on, as always, at Manchester United. OK, let's start with the Carabao Cup and the back page of The Sun. And Jack, this was a victory for Arsenal, but they laboured to that victory. Is it fair to say? What did you make of the performance?
Yeah, I think all too easy in the end, I suppose, as the headline says there. But they did struggle at times, didn't they? It should have been far more comfortable. I suppose it's a benefit for Mikel Arteta that they didn't really have to get out of second gear to get past Port Vale. You obviously wouldn't expect that from them, but there was a number of big names in the side. A good night, really, in terms of Eze getting his first goal for the club. But it will just add to that sort of sense around Arsenal, really, that after the Manchester City game at the weekend, where there were accusations of Mikel Arteta being a bit too cautious, he was very bullish coming back against that yesterday. But I suppose that will now drag into the Newcastle game at the weekend. If they can't go out there and put on a real front foot attacking game and rack up the goals against Port Vale, then what will they manage to do against Newcastle? And really, Arteta can say whatever he wants about how attacking they are and how much he wants to go for it. They need to show this evidence. So really, it's a game that, in the grand scheme of things, this early in the tournament, doesn't matter too much either way. But he would have wanted it to be far more comfortable. But obviously, the important thing is that they do go through.
Yeah, Shaban, how frustrated will Arteta be with the fact that he had to bring on Declan Rice and Leandro Trossard in the final 10 minutes? Because I'm not convinced that was part of the plan, but he felt that they needed a bit more punch.
Well, it's all about the finishers, isn't it, Jess? That's what we've been hearing recently from Mikel Arteta. The guys come on, they do their job, and at the end of the day, they get the win. And I don't think many of us were massively surprised that Arsenal were going to beat Port Vale in this game, with absolutely no disrespect to Port Vale whatsoever. You know, they come away, they've got the job done. It'll be all eyes on the draw and looking ahead to the weekend now for Arsenal, because as that conversation keeps going round and round, there's a little bit of pressure on Mikel Arteta to provide silverware for the club and for the fans this season. And, you know, there were some good performances in there. Great to see Eze off the mark and get his goal. Arsenal fans will be happy about that. I'm sure Eze himself will take confidence from getting his first goal for Arsenal. But also Miles Lewis-Skelly, I mean, you talk about maybe a little bit of criticism that he's been getting from elements and portions of the fan base over the last little while. He had a good game tonight, and that back pass, that kind of back heel from him to Eze, just to put him on a plate and finish it, I thought showed a nice unit tonight. Yeah, you kind of, maybe fans were looking for them to blow them away, but at the end of the day, job done, on to the next. Yeah, you Arsenal fans will want to take the positives, won't they, Jack? The fact that, you know, Trossard was only on the pitch 5 minutes before he got his goal, neatly tucked away in the corner. A first goal for Eze early on in his career as well. A lot for Arsenal to be happy about with this match, though.
There is, you know, those are the key points as well, getting some, you know, good minutes into players like Miles Lewis-Skelly in terms of maybe kicking on. And I think as well, while it wasn't, you know, blowing them away and all singing, all dancing, I was at Chelsea last night, and they were really under the pump against a League One team for quite a long time and looking really rather shaky. So you would much rather have it where it's a bit laboured, but it's still comfortable enough to get through and progress. And while Chelsea are still through, it showed a lot of sore points there and a lot of things that they need to work on. And Mikel Arteta certainly won't have been as upset as Enzo Maresca was with his players last night.
Yeah, Bukayo Saka got some minutes on the pitch. A bit of an injury scare for him, Shaban, but, you know, we'll see how that pans out. But good to see him back in as he continues his recovery.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Bukayo Saka, I mean, he's such a creative player, such a playmaker in the team, the amount of assists that he can gather for Arsenal along the way. And when Saka's not in the squad, they really miss him. I sometimes think he can be underappreciated for how much he provides for Arsenal. But that moment where he was stood on, it really connected with his ankle. I think a lot of Arsenal fans, were watching kind of through their fingers or from behind the couch. But he played on for another 12, 14 minutes before then he made his way off the pitch. So fingers crossed, wrap wee Bukayo Saka up in cotton wool and fingers crossed he'll be all right.
Jack, I know that everyone keeps talking about this new strength in depth that Arsenal have, but they're going to need players like Saka throughout the season, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, you can have all the depth you want, but you need elite level players, and Bukayo Saka is certainly that. There will be a group of players, Declan Rice among them, David Raya, Saliba, Gabriel, that Mikel Arteta will not want to lose. They've definitely improved in terms of that depth, and they've got some good quality in depth. Noni Madueke is a fine backup for Bukayo Saka, but if they'd maybe sold Saka in the summer, they probably wouldn't have been looking to Madueke to be that regular replacement, somebody that starts in and out at the highest level. Don't forget, I mean, they're playing Port Vale tonight, but they're targeting the later rounds of the Champions League, winning the Premier League title at the end of the season. And if they're to get there and beat the opposition, they will need to beat on a regular basis to reach those highs. They're going to need players like Bukayo Saka. We saw after he had a long time out last year, Odegaard was another one as well that had this similarly, that when those players came back, Arsenal's level shifted up by quite a percentage. So keeping Saka fit and firing all the way through is going to be really crucial if Arsenal are finally going to get over the line.
And they march on into the fourth round, as do Manchester City, who ran out 2-0 winners against Huddersfield. How good is it to see this renaissance of Phil Foden continuing, Shaban? A goal and an assist tonight. Yeah,
it's been quite topical, hasn't it, for the return of the Premier League season from the new season. Again tonight, finding the back of the net and just playing the way that we knew that Phil Foden could play football. And, it happens. We hear from all the pros, the former pros who have played in the game for many years. Sometimes you're playing, you're absolutely out of your skin, and then something else could be happening and you're a wee bit off it. But he's certainly back to his best. We heard from Pep Guardiola last week talking about Phil Foden at the moment and his form and saying, we're so glad to see Phil back like this. He's a huge addition to the team when he's playing like this. He's been playing out of his skin. Savinho, again tonight, finding the back of the net. But Phil Foden, he's the man of the moment. Just when you think maybe we've seen him at his peak, he just looks unstoppable once again for Manchester City. So a good win for them tonight. What was the stat, Jess? I heard you say it earlier on. They've won it 6 times in the last 12 years or something, Manchester City.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, always there for you. Huge part of that, Phil Foden. So, on to the next round for them.
Brilliant. Yeah, man of the moment. And England fans will be rubbing their hands with glee because a Phil Foden in form is great news for England with a World Cup on the horizon. Newcastle, big winners against Bradford, 4-1. 2 goals from Joe Linton, 2 goals from Osula. They will play Spurs in the 4th round, Jack. What do you make of that matchup?
I'd imagine everyone at Tottenham is delighted that they're going to be having to drag themselves up to Tyneside in the middle of October in a midweek when they've got Champions League football to be dealing with as well. I'm sure there was a lot of delight in the changing room at Tottenham after that draw came through on the telly. That will be a great game. It's obviously the highlight of the draw that's just come out. It's a good matchup. It's 2 teams that seem like they're ready to go for it, a bit more old school maybe in terms of the way they go at games, a bit more direct and up and down. So it should be an end-to-end game. A good result for Newcastle, of course. Joe Linton getting a couple of goals is a massively popular figure. But I think Eddie Howe's been talking about Osula and maybe how he had a difficult end to to the transfer window with everything that was going on at Newcastle and whether he might have been leaving the club, and with Walter Marder and Johan Wissa coming in as well. But with that depth there, they've lost Isak and you're never going to replace him. If they can have Asula confident as an option to either compete with, to certainly compete with, and also provide cover for Walter Marder as he settles in, then it's a fantastic thing. So these are where these games are helpful for managers like Eddie Howe, and it would have been for Thomas Frank tonight as well. So an awkward trip for them, but they can learn a lot from these games as well.
Yeah, speaking of Thomas Frank, they beat Spurs, and Thomas Frank beat Doncaster at 3-0. Shaban, I'm wondering what you think of Thomas Frank's start at Spurs. Do we feel like this Spurs team have a different identity than under Postecoglou now? Are we starting to see that?
Yeah, I think we are starting to see that. I mean, he's such a good manager, Thomas Frank, and he's inherited a good side, a side that had also just won a trophy. So there's a confidence in this squad and in this team as well. But yeah, they're a different Spurs side to what we saw under Ange Postecoglou. And that is a great result for them tonight. Again, you would expect Spurs to beat Doncaster, but as Jack mentioned there earlier on, you come into these ties and they can be very, very tricky for top sides. The opposition can make it harder for them. But Doncaster tonight struggled against Spurs. It probably could have been more for them, but that is a good result. And I'm pretty sure Thomas Frank will be walking away happy with that.
Yeah, I'm sure he will be. On to Wolves they march on to next, playing bottom of the league, Wolves in their next game. Jack, I'm interested in this because all the Premier League teams won again tonight. The majority won yesterday as well. It just goes to show then, isn't it, how difficult it is for lower leagues to get ahead in this competition?
Well, it is, especially with the seeding now after the changes to Europe. We've got UEFA and the Champions League, the Europa League, the Conference League expanding further and further into the calendar, putting more strain on it. And that's obviously led the Football League and the FA and the powers that be to look at this competition and say, well, we'll seed it and bring them in later as they have done for a long time, and then keep them apart as well. And the things we love about these cup competitions are the upsets. And it just seems that these smaller clubs are now having more and more of a task to really get these upsets going. If you're having to come up against the biggest side and almost give the bigger sides a pass through into the latter stages. We mentioned already, Shaban referenced the stat about Manchester City winning 6 of the last 12. They do take it seriously when it comes to it. And we've seen a lot of strong teams named. Chelsea the same against Lincoln, even though they struggled. It was a strong side that Enzo Maresca named. I think the squad in total was worth over £500 million. So that's the task that is facing up to a lot of these clubs. As more money comes into the Premier League, these squads get deeper and deeper, and it is a really hard thing for the lower league clubs to compete. So I suppose if we do get a couple of those fairy tale stories, they'll be even more special, but it is a bit sad that it's being further stacked against them.
Yeah. Jack, Shaban, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Mail. Look who it is. United reject Anthony ruins Forest big Euro return. That's next. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to sports broadcaster Shaban Ahern and the Sun sports reporter Jack Rosser. Let's get to the Mail. Sorry, Jack. Let's get to the Mail because we're going to be talking Forest now. Nottingham Forest, first foray into Europe in just under 30 years, and it's ended in a 2-2 draw at Real Betis. They might have gone with, look who it is. United reject Anthony ruins Forest's big Euro return. Rather than speak about the fact that Ange Postecoglou is still waiting for his first win, Jack, a lot of the back page is going with the fact that it's a former Manchester United player who's continuing to play better than he ever did for United when he got that equalising goal tonight.
Yeah, Manchester United, any sort of connection to Manchester United will always get you the back page across any of the national newspapers. But I mean, it is quite remarkable that Anthony, they paid so much money for him and he managed to look like almost a pub footballer at Old Trafford, and then goes away to Spain on loan last year, comes into the Manuel Pellegrini's Betis side and really excels there. Obviously, finally gets his move, looked incredibly emotional when when he finally went back to Seville and made that move permanent towards the end of the summer, talking about how he'd struggled through at Manchester United to get this done. And he started where he left off, really, an assist, a very good assist at the start of tonight to put them ahead. And then after an impressive bounce back from Forest, a goal late on to deliver and get a point early on for Manuel Pellegrini's team. I mean, it's Betis, they're a solid side, they're a good side, they're a team made up of a lot of Premier League outcasts. I remember seeing them in the Conference League final at the end of last season and going through, and there are so many familiar names there. I think Pablo Fornals is still going there as well, who used to play for West Ham. So they're a decent side. It will be disappointing for Ange that he's not got that win, but we did finally get to see some of the football that he's been promising to bring to Nottingham Forest, the reason he was brought in as well, or part of the reason he was brought in to replace Nuno so early in the season. We're starting to see that, and I'm sure it won't be too long before he can finally celebrate that first win.
Yeah, back page of The Sun also covering this story. Anthony's late strike hits post, they say. And in the article, Shaban, by Catherine Walsh here, she makes the point that his side threw away a lead for the third game running. How much of Ange is beginning to rub off on this Nottingham Forest side? Are we seeing some differences? Are we seeing some improvements?
To be fair, I think the players did have to take accountability, take account for their actions, their performance in their last game. Tonight, yeah, conceding when you've got a lead, it feels very Ange-like, it feels very Spurs-like. You hate to say that. So I think Nottingham Forest fans are well aware of Ange's ways and Ange's work. And that's going to have to change, otherwise I think this could follow him around. It's the monkey on his back. He kind of has to shake that tagline off. Either way, to go away and get a draw against Betis is not the end of the world. And, Anthony, again, another player. How many times do we sit here and talk about the former Manchester United players who have left the club and gone on to show that the players they can be?
There's a growing list now, Shaban, isn't there? You think about McTominay, who's become a cult figure. Even Rashford's got his shooting boots on now.
Absolutely. Look at Alanga. Look at the amount of players who have improved or just been able to kind of be free and be the players they can be since leaving Manchester United. Now, that just shows you how hard it is to be a great player for Manchester United. But fair play to Anthony. I mean, he had a tough old time. He didn't bring himself to Manchester United. No, it didn't happen. No, at times it was bad. He wasn't great himself. But to see him go and score again tonight, to get an assist and a goal, and see him playing happy. He did say it was a really, really hard time in his life, didn't he, being at Manchester United? He really struggled with it. So that's great. But we could have some fun tonight. I think we could start putting together a starting 11 of players who have left Manchester United and gone on to do better in their career.
That's a great concept. I'm going to have a little think about that. Let's stay with the theme. Let's stay with the theme of Manchester United, a player that could join that first 11. Kobbie Mainoo in the back of the mirror here. Well, in the mirror online, I should say. Kobbie Mainoo ready to leave Man United in January, despite new Ruben Amorim talks. Jack, this is a player that has bags and bags of talent. Is a boyhood Manchester United fan, graduated from the academy, and now wants to leave. This is a sad, sad tale, isn't it, for a player that just doesn't feel like he belongs in this team?
Well, yeah, he's definitely going to be the next cab off the rank in terms of those players that go and suddenly shine elsewhere, I think, isn't it? It's a really sad story that Ruben Amorim can't find a way to fit in somebody who is clearly a very talented, very promising player. We spoke about it earlier with Foden, sort of Shaban, saying, these players go up and down when they're young and have peaks and troughs. And that's probably what Kobbie Mainoo's had. He came in, he broke through really impressively. I think Paul Scholes was talking about him as being far ahead of himself in terms of at that age as a Manchester United player. And Paul Scholes doesn't hand out praise too readily. I think he's been criticising Marcus Rashford again this week, and he's often somebody to speak his mind. So he's not going to, pour praise on a player for no reason. He came into the England side, looked incredibly impressive when he was brought in at an early stage into the England setup, the senior England setup as well, that is. And the fact that Ruben Amorim can't look at him and play him in a position or find a system that puts Kobbie Mainoo in a position where he can get back to his best and really impact Manchester United is a crying shame. They're a club that is founded on the success of their academy, and I think you wind back 18 months ago, and there were pictures of him and Alejandro Garnacho sat celebrating together with massive grins on their faces, looking like the future of Manchester United. Garnacho, for whatever reason, some of it perhaps on him, others on the successive managers, have fallen out of favour and left for Chelsea, partially in a PSR deal as well, because United have been struggling on that. And it's sad that now they're probably within the club starting to see Kobbie Mainoo as someone that could also go for pure profit and not stay and really drive the club forward. Whoever signs him is going to get a player with incredible prospects. It's not a surprise that he's ended up in this situation and wants to move on, because I think he accepted fairly late on in the summer that that was going to be the only way for him and just couldn't find a move. So when it happens, it will be a sad day, but not a surprising one.
Yeah. Yeah. Shaban, I just want to move on to the back of the Times now, where Wayne Rooney has been speaking very openly about his mental health struggles and says, "I'd be dead but for Colleen," and talks about the fact that his wife has helped him through some serious struggles with alcohol over the years. It's interesting, this, isn't it? Because I think we're seeing a different side to Wayne Rooney, someone that's grown up in the spotlight, has spoken candidly about his struggles, and now he's talking about something really personal here.
Yeah, I mean, so often now we hear of retired footballers who have struggled, you know, since coming out of the game, and have had different issues and tried to find a normal life after football, and it's really, really difficult. And Wayne Rooney, he's such a legend. You know, he was such an incredible football player, and then when it all stops, and as they say, when the lights go out, how do they cope? You know, and Wayne Rooney is plastered front page, middle page, back page. You know, whenever he moved, whatever he did, and his private life was made very, very public from the age of 15. You know, when you think about that in this day and age, it's crazy how much attention that him and Colleen got. And I actually think, you know, but a little bit aside from the sport, you know, how they've stuck together, you know, through everything, and everything that you think you know, or everything that we have seen or we've been led to believe, seem like a strong couple. And I saw them about a year ago at the Legends of Football event, where he was being honoured that night, and they were there as a team. Their children were with them, a couple of their kids were there, and you think fair play to them, you know. And he's obviously had his struggles, and he's worked through that. And that conversation, this podcast he's done with Rio Ferdinand, it's a very insightful one, and it makes you think of them a little bit differently. They're human beings at the end of the day, but it's good that they've stuck together, and she's the reason that he's still going today.
Jack, I just want to move on to the Ryder Cup. I haven't got long now, but I just want to speak about, you know, it's only 2 days away. Everyone's looking forward to it. What chance do you give Team Europe? In the back of the newspapers, the Telegraph especially, McIlroy speaking about the fact that there's so many boos over in New York for this Team Europe side. You've got about 20 seconds to tell me how well you think Team Europe can do.
Go on, Jack. Go on, Jack.
I think they can do very well. I mean, they'll be ready for this atmosphere. They'll be braced for it. They've had these weird VR headsets. They'll absolutely be up for it. And Luke Donald has already sort of fired the starting gun on it by having a couple of jibes against the money that the American players are going to be raking in. That's another thing that will pull this European team together, get them fired up, and they know they can make a real bit of history and upset the recent record, certainly, of the Ryder Cup and going in the win.
That's your 20 seconds done. Thank you very much. Sorry, time is against us. Coming up next on Sky Sports News.